Many years ago I was in New Zealand just for a short while, and they had some restaurants where they were not allowed to serve alcohol. So you had a concept down there called bring your own drink, or BYOD. They've changed that concept now, so now it's something else, but bring your own whatever. This is a phrase I found on Wikipedia, or something like that. I'm sorry, it's not very polite to have chewing gum while you're talking. But bring your own device is a concept that we've come up with over the last 4 or 5 years, something like that. I think it's about 5 or 6 years since I first heard about it. They can bring their own computing devices, smartphones, laptops, and PDAs to the workplace to use and for connectivity on the corporate network. Most of this is done with phones. Smartphones is one of the places where it's mostly used, but laptops. So probably people won't go down and buy a Windows 7 machine or an XP machine privately and put that on the corporate network. It does happen, but it could be things like I'm using a MacBook, something that I've bought myself. I think it's a very handy device to travel with. I could have bought something very cheap like a Linux machine and still bring it into the environment. So it does actually happen that we have people coming in with laptops that they can only work on these laptops, and therefore they buy their own equipment and bring that into the corporate network. So why don't they want to do that? Well, the point is, many of these devices, so when we're looking at the smartphones and the tablets and things like that, they're consumer devices. They are so easy to operate, as opposed to a lockdown Windows XP or, heaven forbid, a Linux machine, which is impossible to work with unless you know what Linux is all about. But this one is so simple that even a child or a 100-year-old woman can play with it, as you've just seen. So it's convenient, easy to learn, fun to use. It brings real business value in the terms of productivity and business agility. And the fire alarm went off. Seriously, when we did this in Copenhagen, the Pulse Comes To You in Copenhagen, we had to evacuate. Like 300 people had to go out of the hotel and then back in like 5 minutes later. I hope we're not going to be needing to do that. Users might pay for their own equipment. In many cases, bring your own device is a concept of people bringing their own devices, they buying their own equipment. But there are certain companies where it's a scheme that you give the employee €1,000 a year to go out and buy their own equipment, 500 euros, 1,000 euros, or whatever. Shell in Holland has been practicing this for 5 or 6 years. Citrix is doing the same. They're actually giving people money to go out and buy their own equipment so that the user will bring in whatever equipment he feels comfortable with. So the users might pay for their own equipment. It could be something that the bring your own device concept can also be applied to equipment that's actually corporate owned. And one of the great things about this is we're talking cutting edge technology, because when people go out and buy their own equipment to be productive, they're not buying a Nokia 9210 or anything from the last century or whatever. They are buying the very newest stuff. So we see the newest of the newest, where corporations seldom can cope with all the new stuff they're bringing in. When I joined IBM a couple of years ago, I was given a XP with 2 gigs of RAM and a Nokia something stupid phone, and that was it. And that's what corporations do. They give you the old, antiquated equipment that they know what is, they can rely on, and it's probably cheap to buy, and that's what they give them. And the users are not happy with that, so they go out and buy their own equipment, and they buy the latest and the newest. You're all IT people at some level, so I guess you have a PC at home. Okay, 2 years ago, or maybe nowadays, is your PC at home faster than the one you have at work? Isn't it? Well, some of you say no. Depending on the company, depending on where you work, and depending on what you have at home. Out of the 10 machines I have at home, most of them are actually faster than the 2 gigabyte XP machine. So why is this not funny? Well, the thing is, consumer technology, and this is consumer technology, again, as I said earlier, you cannot forcibly install a device, an application on an Android phone or an Apple phone. It is a consumer technology, only the consumer can control this device. And that is not as secure or as manageable as required by the enterprise. The enterprise doesn't really like consumer devices because they cannot control the device. They cannot, exercise the amount of control that the enterprise wants to over this device. Lack of strategic approach to the consumerization creates security risk, financial exposure. So if people are not designing a strategy for how to cope with these devices, then you have a problem. I was with an insurance company. We had a meeting. There was like 10, 15 people, workstation management, security, and everybody in the room. And they said, well, we have a clear Windows strategy. They said, everything in this building is Windows. We're using Windows Phone, 6.5, 7, 7.5, and that's it. And we can't wait till Windows 8 comes out. Then we're going to really go for the smartphones and go even further with that. No exceptions. These are the only things that we allow, only Windows. And then the guy sitting next to me sort of like dragged out an iPhone and said, well, I have an iPhone. I have access to the internet, to my mail on this iPhone. And they all looked at him and said, okay, so how did you get that? You know, there's got to be an exception. I thought there were no exceptions. And he said, well, I'm the CFO. I can do whatever I like, basically. But if you do not have a strategic approach, you would have people like that who doesn't really care about that. They just put the stupid devices on the network anyway. So you've got to find out exactly what is it you want to put on the network, what is it you want to allow, and then have people adhere to these rules. One of the things, if you look at on bring your own device discussions on the internet, is that it's difficult to measure improved user productivity. Now, I've said a number of times, Apple said a number of times, user productivity. This is where you really get user productivity. It's just difficult to measure. No one believes that. None of the people who are looking at user productivity really believes that. Yes, you work a little bit more, and I can see you're checking your emails, but are you more productive? And why do they question that? So I went for some of the resources on the net, and I found top free iPhone apps. Top free iPhone apps, downloaded apps. These are all what? These are all games or social. So I went top paid iPhone apps. Said, okay, if people want to pay for it, guess what? Still games. I had to go all the way down to top paid iPad apps before the first one, Pages from Apple, came up. User productivity? When they could have downloaded or bought or whatever, all the business applications that are actually out there. Citrix Receiver, VMware View, Numbers, WebEx connectors, OneNote. OneNote is actually great on the iPad, which is free guy. So user productivity is very difficult to measure because we don't know what's happening on these mobile devices. Right, uniqueness of mobile. So what is unique about mobile again? And I'm sorry, I keep talking about the same things. I will come to the bring your own device in a second. So uniqueness, you have to be aware of that personal phones and tablets are shared with the family, which is a security risk. Mobile devices have multiple personas, so it's a work tool, yes, but it's also an entertainment device. Funny enough. It's a personal organizer, and it's a reading device. So this is why I have an iPad. When I'm in the plane or something like that where I can't really read, I have an iPad. I remember the old days when I got my first laptop, I was sitting in bed with my laptop in front of me, as you do. And my wife was saying, like, do you really need to have that device on? And now she can't see when I've got my iPhone under the covers and I can read, whatever it is I want to read in the middle of. Mobile devices are diverse. So one of the problems with mobile devices is we have a lot of operating systems, which gives us some problems in the sense that it's difficult to manage all these different operating systems. And I'm going to go through the operating systems in a second. We have diverse app development delivery model. What is it you want to do with the apps, and how do you deliver them out to the iPhones? How can you be sure that people are actually downloading your enterprise app? Funny thing is here that they're used in more location, which means that we have to look more at our Wi-Fi. And devices are more likely to be lost or stolen. So a desktop PC is rarely stolen. A laptop, be it whatever, gets lost, gets stolen. Actually, Copenhagen Airport told me a couple of years ago that they found something like 700 laptops every year that people left behind in Copenhagen, just Copenhagen Airport. That's like 1.5 PC a day that people would leave or forget in the airport. I mean, sorry. And 1.5, so, you know. No, anyway, smaller devices like an iPhone, things like that, will eventually get more lost and more stolen. There's a gang of people in Copenhagen right now running down the pedestrian streets, and when people walk in with their iPhone up to the ear, they just steal the phone and run on. That's what happens when you have an expensive phone. And this is true, it actually happened to one of my colleagues. No, weird story. Anyway. OS architecture puts a user in control as a consumer device. Difficult to enforce policy atlas, security policy have less of a chance of dictating experience because we do not want that. So let me just go back and look at the various operating systems that we have in play here. And there are actually more than on this list. So this is Apple iOS, Google Android, RIM BlackBerry, and Windows Mobile, Windows Phone. There will also be devices built on Symbian and Bada and a few other mobile operating systems, but these are the main ones. So Google Android, for instance, most popular consumer platform, wide range of devices from multiple vendors and multiple OS customizations, which is probably one of the problems with Google, really, because it's, well, it's cheap. It's about half the price of an Apple device. It's more durable. You can actually drop an Android phone on outside on the concrete, and it won't break as easy as an iPhone will. An iPhone has a glass surface, so it'll break. But the variety of OS customizations, so you have phones from Google, the Nexus ranges, you have Samsung, you have HTC, and probably a few other vendors. They're all different. Different implementations. Some of them has a mail client on them. Some of them don't have any mail client on it. Some of them have VPN software on it. Some of them don't. We still have old devices, version 2.2 of Android in the market, still used. Guess what? It's not an enterprise-ready operating system. It cannot be encrypted. Doesn't hold encryption or anything like that. So it's a difficult platform to manage. But again, it's the most popular consumer platform, and it's actually most units sold. 50-55%, as I said earlier, are Android devices out there. 25% are the iOS, and when it comes to the strategy of which platform do I want to plan my future on, mobile platform, something like 50% are actually going for the Apple iOS, because it's a more manageable platform. This one, funny enough, has a shipment percentage of about 10% of the devices sold right now are based on RIM and BlackBerry. Research in Motion, or BlackBerry, is a very secure operating system. It's very controllable. They have about 5,000 settings policies you can put on it. So you have extreme control over this device. The only problem is it can only be used for mail, which was a great success when it came out 5-6 years ago. Nowadays, well, that's commodity. Anyone can do mail. However, because of the manageability of this device, 20 to 25% of enterprises are still relying on a BlackBerry platform as their mobile strategy, because it's a more secure platform. They feel they have more control over RIM and BlackBerry. This one is a dark horse. So Windows Mobile practically doesn't exist anymore. 6.5. It's there, but very small. Windows Phone, 7.5. great operating system. If you ever come across a Windows Phone, it has a very great user experience. Apple is very split up in apps, so you have tons of apps, but the single app cannot communicate with any of the other apps, and it's very isolated in itself. So the user experience is like like small islands on an iPhone, whereas this one is very integrated, the whole user experience. When you take a picture on a Windows Phone, you can automatically send it over to LinkedIn, to Facebook, to Outlook, to wherever you want this picture to reside. So the user experience is actually pretty good on a Windows Phone. Only problem is Windows Phone has a whooping market share of 1.5%. Nobody's using these, unfortunately, even though it's a great phone. One of the reasons why they're not using it, you can't manage it. Windows 7, Windows 7.5, they forgot to put in management software. They forgot to put in a management API for it. So you can manage it through Exchange, through ActiveSync, and that's about it, very limited in your management experience. That will probably be better with Windows Phone 8, that we can manage the Windows Phone 8 when that comes out. But it's going to be a bit of a struggle for Windows, because for Microsoft, because they're up against Android and they're up against Apple, who's already in the market. Right. This was something about operating systems and mobile devices. So let's talk about bring your own device and what do we do. So I talked to a lot of companies about bring your own device, and we have different strategies. But let me give you an example of what we do in IBM. So basically, we have something like 430,000 employees in over 120 countries. We have something like 550,000 laptops, desktops, PCs. We have something like actually it says 750,000 endpoints, but we have a large number of mobile devices as well, smartphones and things like that. And we have so far deployed our management system, Ibm Endpoint Manager, to the 550,000 workstations, and the next phase is the 300,000 mobile devices, where we've so far have reached the 120,000. We saw a 17% decrease in endpoint security when we started using a program called Ibm Endpoint Manager, and I'm going to go into deeper details about what that is. We have bring your own device to the extreme, in the sense that people can bring in whatever they want into IBM. We use all kinds of operating systems that are out there, which is one of the things that IBM really stands for, in the sense that if you look at Apple, they're selling a device, a phone, a MacBook, an iPad, an iOS, the apps on it, so they have a very controlled ecosystem. Microsoft is selling an operating system. They don't sell the hardware, but they're selling the operating system, the applications, and everything on top of it. And then you have hardware vendors who are selling operating systems with Windows on, with some other operating systems on, Linux on, and so on. These are all sort of like islands. We fill out all the blanks, in the sense that we do everything. Whatever our customers do, we do the same. We have customers who are running only on Linux. We have customers who are running only on some obscure version of Linux. So we are able to manage, we are able to work with that obscure version of Linux, because that's what we do. We go out to whatever our customers are using, as opposed to the other guys who would say, well, I don't care what you're using, you should have a Microsoft strategy, or whatever. Just bad talking about the competitors, or about the other people. So we have a large number of devices, the 550,000 devices. People can bring in whatever they like. How do we then control that? Well, first of all, we have the IBM Endpoint Manager, and then we've sort of like looked at the roles of a given workstation. So a workstation has a role, and we have to register our workstations, and then we have to assign a role to a workstation. So a primary workstation, secondary workstation, sort of like explains itself. I have 3 workstations, one primary, one secondary. And then I have a personally owned workstation, which is my iMac, and my MacBook Pro Air here. We can have classroom workstation, we can have lab workstation, and we can have share workstations. Now, there are a couple of rules for these workstations. So The next level is that we look at the user and say, what is exactly is this user allowed to do on his workstation? And we have privileged and non-privileged user. I'm a non-privileged user. A non-privileged user can be an administrator, or is probably most of the time an administrator of his own device. I can install whatever applications I want on my primary workstation, my secondary workstation, and on my privately owned workstation. I'm a non-privileged user in the sense that I can do whatever I want on my workstation, but only on my workstation. If I ever connect to a customer's environment, which we do, I have to be a privileged user, and I have to use a special primary workstation for it. So whenever you call up IBM and the very nice guy from IBM saying, you know, let me just connect to your backend and let me just solve the problem on the SQL server, on the DB2 database, or whatever problem you're facing, that guy will, according to the rules, do that from his primary workstations, which is a special hardened version of Linux. And that is only the privileged users can do that from their special hardened versions of Linux. So we've given everybody the opportunity to own or to work with an XP or Windows 7 box. They can install their own applications, but they are non-privileged user. They can only use it for mail, calendar, their whatever business productivity program they're using, and connect to our intranet. They cannot connect to our customer's environment using a Windows 7 workstation, even though it's highly secure and highly controlled. So, a couple of things here. 7 steps. First of all, you have to register your computer, your tablet, mobile device. You have to say what it's used for. Is it primary or secondary or personally owned workstation? What is your user role? You have to use IBM's tool to secure, encrypt your computer, tablet, mobile device, or storage device. So we obviously encrypt these devices if it has customer data on it. We do not allow people to mix IBM data with non-IBM clouds. As I said earlier about the iCloud thing, so iCloud is a great thing. I use it privately. I'm probably not allowed to do that because what happens if I take corporate documents and put it up in the iCloud? We don't know where the iCloud server is. So we can use cloud services provided as an IBM cloud server that we know where the server is. And that's what we do in IBM. Any corporate organization will have the same problem. You're not allowed to have public data, or sorry, a public organization. You're not allowed to have personal identification numbers or medical records or anything like that in a cloud service where you don't know where the cloud server is. Declare public wireless untrusted. No, if you qualify to a personally owned device for specific business purposes. So yes, there are exceptions. If I need to connect to a Windows environment from a Windows 7 desktop, or if the customer is actually giving me a Windows 7 desktop so I can connect to his environment, yes, then you can do it. But you really need, to be allowed to do that. Report incidents, obviously. And then we have to install the Tivoli Endpoint Manager client. So why do we have to install the Tivoli Endpoint Manager client? Well, actually, the Tivoli Endpoint Manager client is the guy that is sort of like controlling the whole environment. It's a desktop management program or desktop management solution, and it covers everything that we need in the space. So it covers from our laptops, our servers, down to our smartphones from the same solution. Why do we have a solution that does smartphones and tablets in the same one? Well, basically, it's the same kind of thing, whether you control a Windows 7 laptop or whether you control a smartphone or an iPad. A lot of things are similar. Encryption management, easy to deploy, application management. Some of them are very specific to mobile devices, device wipe, enterprise app store, self-service portals, even though you can have self-service portal over here. These, for the laptop, you're more concerned about power management, you're more concerned about provisioning and patching. You don't, in general, patch a mobile operating system. Actually, when you look at it this way, if you have a Samsung Android phone, you probably cannot install a new operating system on it. You can with an HTC, but once you do that, your support for that device is gone. Nexus is the only one, Google, that will allow you to install a new operating system and the device will still be supported. Apple does that too. Why does Samsung not allow you to install a new version of the operating system? They'd rather sell you a new phone. You know, so you want to go from 2.2 to Android 3.0? Well, here's a new phone for you. You know, Samsung and HTC, they sell phones. They're not selling operating system. Google, they sell phones, yes, but they also sell operating systems. Apple, iOS, they sell phones, but they're also selling operating system. So, traditional endpoint management is more or less the same. So, Tivoli Endpoint Manager, yeah, there's a slide from our website. Tivoli Endpoint Manager is a desktop management solution that continuously manages the laptops, the smartphones, the things in your environment. It does that from one single server. One single server can support up to 250,000 devices. We have, as I said, 550,000 devices in IBM laptops in IBM under control of this one. We have 3 servers, 3 management servers, and probably a bit more, but 3 management servers really to control that many devices. We can do things like patch management, software user analysis, power management, core protection, which is antivirus protection, mobile devices. We can do whole lifecycle management, which is OS distribution, software distribution, and all that security compliance from one solution. And we can do that on desktops, laptops, servers, mainframes, C, whatever you have. And we can do that on mobile devices from the same product. So I know this is a bring your own device solution, but this is one of the ways that you solve the management solution in a bring your own device environment. There are other vendors in the mobile device management space. Many of them will do mobile device management and mobile device management only. So how do you manage your Macs? How do you manage your Linux? How do you manage your whatever? This is a solution. This is also a sales presentation, in case you've missed that part. So, going back to bring your own device, it's obviously not just Endpoint Manager. Endpoint Manager is a very good part of it, but you really need to look at a couple of things. Is your network ready? As I said earlier in the presentation, have you divided up your network with a guest network, with a enterprise mobile Wi-Fi network? Do you only have cable network? I still come out to customers who haven't deployed Wi-Fi. That happens. An iPad, well, there's really no place to put in the plug for the network. So, do you have Wi-Fi? Do you have a secure Wi-Fi deployed? Can helpdesk handle the incoming flood? One of our CIOs I spoke to, he said, did I tell you that story? He was doing 100 mails. He said, traveling the train from Copenhagen to Jutland, he did 100 mails on his iPad. When he came to his home, he found out that his iPad had lost all his power. So he didn't know whether he actually sent those 100 emails, answered those 100 emails, or what was the status of it. And he couldn't connect to the backend because he only had his iPad. So he came back to his workplace. He's a CIO, he's a senior executive, and gave it to the help desk and said, fix this. Is your help desk ready to take a challenge like that? Someone comes in with an iPad, said, I don't know what happened with this one, fix it. Again, as I said, the strategy, you need to be able to find out whether you can actually support this in your environment, whether you can support that many operating systems coming in. If you've decided that you will support Apple devices, make sure that your help desk knows what they're doing when they work with this. Is your app store open for business? New services ready to roll out? Are management policies and procedures set? Do you know what to do when you're deploying a bring your own device solution? One of the corporations I spoke to recently said that they started with the strategy. Basically, they designed the strategy. They used to have BlackBerries. Now they've dropped the BlackBerries because the user demand, simply. User demand was that BlackBerries, all very nice, but they wanted the mix between the personal calendar and the corporate calendar, and personal mail and corporate mail, and they couldn't do that on BlackBerry. And nobody wanted to carry around two devices, one for the phone and mail like the BlackBerry, and one for all the personal stuff. So in order to use just one device, they went for an Apple strategy. The Apple device, again, is very manageable. They can control it. They know where it is. And then they had a mobile device. So they designed the strategy and said, okay, we're only working with iPhones, and we still have BlackBerries, but very few is starting to outphase them. We have iPhones and we have controlled iPhones. So I said, what about corporate data? Really important corporate data. What do you do about that? Well, he said only our really top-level executive have corporate data that we will, we're afraid to get lost. It will be a problem to us if we get lost. So, and the executives knows this. So what they've done for those is, again, mobile device management, very clear control of these devices, what is mail, and if something happens, if this device is out of sight or out of their control for more than 1 or 2 hours, and they don't know where the device is, they can actually log into a self-service portal and delete the device completely, immediately. Is that too late? Yes, probably. If someone really wants to break into your environment and they get hold of one of these devices, they can hack it. Nothing is secure. Even though it's encrypted, they can probably get into it anyway. We're talking about physical security here. If they have the physical device in their hand, it could be difficult. I'm not going to say that anything is 100% sure. I'm going to say it's probably very difficult for the hacker to do it, but it's physical security. If he has access to the device, he can probably do that. Are all your employees aware of the policies, the strategy that you've put in place? That's one of the things that we ran into in IBM. People thought they could bring in their mobile devices. What's stopping me? I know the password for the internet. For the Wi-Fi. If I bring in a MacBook like this, I can connect to email. Yeah, cool, I can connect to the internet. I know I need to put on some kind of antivirus on it. What else do I need to do? So we've designed a whole couple of web pages where you go through all the steps that you have to all the software that you have to, in the encryption software that you have to put on the device, the antivirus, the Ibm Endpoint Manager agent, so it is easily to install on these devices, register your workstation. So you need to tell all these people, this is what you have to do when you bring in this device in your in the environment. We're still struggling with the Macs in IBM in the sense that we're getting the Endpoint Manager out to all these devices, but people, well, we're trying to at least, but I still meet people who are saying, do I need to install what, and how do I do that? So basically we designed a page called Blue Mac, and anyone with a Mac needs to know this page, and will get all his software in there. If he hasn't done it, just putting it on the network will give the IT department something like maybe 4 days. After 4 days, they will contact this user and say, what is this? How will they figure that out? Well, basically they can scan the network. They use Ibm Endpoint Manager to scan the network, and anything that's new on the network that they don't know of, they can find out where it came from, where it is, how it's signed on to the network. That's some of the tools that you have actually in Ibm Endpoint Manager. Right, so bring your own device, whatever you do, whatever you set up, a couple of things that you have to, a couple of steps that you have to follow. First of all, design a strategy. Find out exactly what is it you want to do with mobile devices, what is it you want to do with bring your own devices. Will I allow them? Can you avoid them? Probably. If you're a very controlled environment, yes. What is a controlled environment like a bank? Are the banks using bring your own devices? Anyone here from a bank? No one from a bank in here? Okay. Okay. You from a bank. Do you have bring your own devices in a bank?
No, I'm not from a bank.
Oh, you're not from a bank. Okay. You're just polite. Okay. Anybody else who wants to be polite? No, sorry. I work with banks. Banks have bring your own device policies in place. Even something as secure as a bank has this. And the insurance company that I spoke about earlier, yeah. Bring your own devices or devices that connect to your network will appear wherever you are, whatever company you have. So you have to design a strategy for what is it I do here, what is my policy, what do I allow, what will I accept on my network. Mail and calendar will get you 90% of the way, seriously. People will be productive, people will see the benefits as soon as they have mail and calendar. Whether you want to put in more advanced features like enterprise applications out there, yeah, you can do that, but put that in your strategy. Strategy first, find out what is allowed, create the policy, write out to the user, we have a new policy. One of the things I showed you earlier was that we can actually do location awareness, so we can actually see that this phone, this Android phone, or this iPad, this iPhone, we can see the location of it, we can see where it is. Is that something that is allowed? Is that something that is acceptable? Well, actually, if you put it in your policy, then you can actually make it acceptable. Sometimes this policy has to be signed off by the individual user. It can't be a general user policy. It has to be signed off by the individuals. And the problem here is that you have private data and you have public data, and you really need to know where your users are all the time. Well, you can, but find out whether you're allowed to do it. Talk to your accountants about it. And then when you have a strategy and you have a policy, have a tool. It's very nice to have a strategy, it's very nice to have a policy, but if you can't control it, if you don't know, trust is good, control is better. Sven Erik, the next speaker, is probably going to say something about that as well. We believe in control. Yeah. You need to have a tool, you need to have some kind of control of these devices. You need to be able to see what kind of devices you have. You want to be able to, for instance, run an application scan so you can see what kind of applications are actually installed on this Android device. Why? All applications are secure. Yes, all applications are secure. But a couple of years ago, someone hacked into the Android market and put back 23 applications, games, that were insecure. Actually, one of those who started up, calling some obscure number in the Tonga Islands in the middle of the night without turning on. So an app can do that for you. Is that more secure on an iPhone? Yeah, probably. We haven't seen that many on the iPhone yet. Will they come? Yeah, of course they will. Someone will find a way to work around the Apple criteria of security. Actually, one of the things, in order to be able to create an app to Apple, you have to be registered as a developer. So I decided to play around with the work-life, so I went to Apple's website and signed up as a developer. And now I'm a certified Apple developer. I can only do applications for banking, but I'm actually certified Apple developer. I don't know anything about development, but so is that secure? Is Apple guaranteeing that you do that? Yeah, well, still there's a process when you publish an app. It still has to be approved by the Apple people. This one is slightly more open in the sense that getting more people involved in the process, which is why the hackers apparently were able to put in 23 apps disguised as games. Are there games on these things? Of course there are games on these things. No, never mind. So get your strategy, get your policy, and get your tool. And may I recommend, just subtly, that one of the tools that you could use would be Ibm Endpoint Manager from IBM with its mobile device management capabilities.